The emergency room doors burst open at 11:47 p.m. on a cold February night. Paramedics rushed in wheeling a gurney carrying 68-year-old Martin Fletcher, a decorated Vietnam veteran and beloved high school history teacher. His face was swollen beyond recognition. 3 ribs were broken. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle. Blood soaked through his shirt from where he'd been kicked repeatedly in the chest. "Who did this to him?" a nurse gasped. The answer would shock the entire town of Ridgemont, Virginia. Earlier that evening, Martin had been walking his dog near the town square when a black Mercedes SUV came speeding through a crosswalk, nearly hitting him. Martin raised his hand and shouted, "Slow down! This is a pedestrian zone." The vehicle screeched to a halt. Out stepped 22-year-old Bradley Morrison, son of Colonel David Morrison, the highly respected base commander at nearby Fort Harrison. Bradley was known around town for his expensive cars, his arrogant attitude, and his belief that his father's rank made him untouchable. "You yelling at me, old man?" Bradley sneered, stepping closer. "Young man, you nearly ran me over. There are families here. You need to." Bradley didn't let him finish. He shoved Martin hard in the chest. The elderly veteran stumbled backward. "My father runs this town. You don't talk to me like that." Martin stood his ground. "Your father's rank doesn't give you the right to endanger people." That's when Bradley snapped. Witnesses would later testify that Bradley attacked Martin with shocking brutality, punching him in the face, kicking him when he fell, and laughing as the old man tried to protect himself. 2 bystanders had to physically pull Bradley away. By then, Martin was unconscious on the pavement. The attack was captured on a nearby security camera. Within hours, the footage went viral. Local news ran it on repeat. Social media exploded with outrage. "Justice for Martin" became the rallying cry. The town demanded accountability. But many whispered that the Morrison family's connections would make the charges disappear. After all, Colonel Morrison had friends in high places: politicians, judges, law enforcement. Bradley was arrested but released on bail within hours. He posted on social media that night, "Overblown. Old guy was fine. Media making a big deal out of nothing." The arrogance was stunning. 3 weeks later, the trial date was set. The case was assigned to Judge Robert Callahan, a 30-year veteran of the bench, himself a former Marine Corps officer who had served 2 tours in Vietnam alongside men like Martin Fletcher. The entire town waited to see if justice would truly be served. But a revelation in the courtroom was about to change everything. The Ridgemont County Courthouse was packed. Every seat was filled. People stood along the walls. Local reporters crammed into the press section. Outside, protesters held signs reading "Equal Justice" and "No one is above the law." At 9 a.m. sharp, the bailiff announced, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Robert Callahan." Judge Callahan entered, a tall, silver-haired man in his early 70s with sharp eyes and a commanding presence. He wore his black robe with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen combat, buried friends, and spent decades upholding the law without compromise. He sat, adjusted his glasses, and surveyed the courtroom with the calm authority of a man who tolerated no nonsense. "Be seated." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the people are ready to proceed in the case of the Commonwealth versus Bradley James Morrison. The defendant is charged with aggravated assault, assault and battery, and reckless endangerment." Judge Callahan nodded. "Is the defendant present?" Bradley Morrison strutted into the courtroom like he was walking into a country club. He wore an expensive suit, designer shoes, and a smirk that suggested he found the entire proceeding amusing. His attorney, a high-priced defense lawyer from Richmond, walked beside him with equal confidence. Bradley sat down, leaned back in his chair, and glanced around the room as if bored. Judge Callahan's eyes narrowed slightly. He had seen this type before, entitled, reckless, incapable of understanding consequences. The prosecutor called Martin Fletcher to the stand. The elderly veteran walked slowly to the witness box, still moving carefully due to his injuries. His left arm was in a sling. Faint bruises still marked his face. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was steady. "Mr. Fletcher," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell the court what happened on the night of February 14th? Martin took a breath. "I was walking my dog. A vehicle came speeding through the crosswalk. I called out to warn the driver to slow down. The young man got out, and he attacked me. Did you provoke him in any way?" "No, sir. I only asked him to be careful. There were children playing nearby." "What happened next?" "He shoved me, called me names. When I didn't back down, he beat me. I remember the pavement. I remember the pain. I woke up in the hospital 3 hours later." The courtroom was silent. Bradley leaned over to his attorney and whispered something. Then he laughed, quietly, but audibly. Judge Callahan's jaw tightened. The defense attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client deeply regrets this unfortunate incident. However, we believe the prosecution is exaggerating the severity. Mr. Fletcher's injuries were minor. My client was under stress. This was an isolated mistake." Bradley nodded smugly, as if agreeing with his lawyer's spin. Judge Callahan leaned forward. "Minor injuries? 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, facial trauma requiring stitches. Those are minor." The attorney hesitated. "Compared to what could have? Compared to what?" "Murder." The judge's voice was ice. "You're here to defend your client, counselor, not insult this court's intelligence." Bradley's smirk faded slightly. Judge Callahan turned his gaze to the defendant. "Mr. Morrison, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Bradley stood lazily. "Look, Your Honor, I'm sorry the guy got hurt. But he was yelling at me. I reacted. It happens. I think everyone's overreacting." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Martin Fletcher lowered his head, his hands trembling. Judge Callahan's expression hardened. "You think everyone's overreacting? A decorated veteran, who served this country with honor, was brutalized by you, and your response is that people are overreacting." Bradley shrugged. "I mean, yeah." The judge's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "Sit down, Mr. Morrison." Bradley sat, still smirking. Judge Callahan glanced at the back of the courtroom, his eyes scanning the crowd. He paused. Something had caught his attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," the judge said slowly, "before I proceed, I want to know if Colonel David Morrison is present in this courtroom." The room froze. Every head turned. And then someone stood in the back row. Colonel David Morrison rose from his seat. He was a man in his early 50s, broad-shouldered, with salt-and-pepper hair cropped military short. He wore his dress uniform, ribbons gleaming on his chest, a lifetime of service displayed for all to see. His face was stony, but his eyes betrayed deep anguish. He had been sitting in the back, unnoticed, watching his son's arrogance unfold. "Colonel Morrison," Judge Callahan said quietly, "please approach the bench." The colonel walked down the center aisle. The courtroom was utterly silent. Every eye followed him. He stopped at the railing separating the gallery from the court. "Your Honor," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm here." Judge Callahan studied him for a long moment. "Colonel, I know who you are. I know your service record. I know your reputation. You're a man of honor." The colonel nodded stiffly. "I try to be, Your Honor." "Then I need to ask you something," the judge continued. "Are you here to defend your son's actions? Are you here to use your influence to minimize what he did to Martin Fletcher?" Bradley looked at his father with expectation, waiting for the rescue. The colonel closed his eyes. When he opened them, tears glistened. "No, Your Honor," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm not." Bradley's face went pale. The colonel turned to face his son. "Bradley, I love you. You're my son. But what you did was inexcusable." "Dad." "No." The colonel's voice was firm now. "I raised you better than this. Your mother and I gave you everything. We taught you respect, honor, responsibility. And you threw it all away because you thought my rank would protect you." He turned back to Judge Callahan. "Your Honor, I'm not here to ask for leniency. I'm here to ask you to hold my son accountable. Fully accountable. He needs to learn that no one is above the law. Not even my son." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Bradley stared at his father in disbelief. You're serious?" "I've never been more serious in my life." The colonel's voice broke. "I've spent 30 years serving this country. I've led men into battle. I've buried soldiers who died with honor. And I will not let my son dishonor everything I've stood for." He looked at Martin Fletcher, who sat quietly in the witness box. "Mr. Fletcher, I'm so sorry. You served with honor. You deserved respect. My son gave you violence instead. I'm ashamed." Martin's eyes filled with tears. He nodded slowly. Judge Callahan let the silence settle. Then he spoke. "Colonel Morrison, you've just done something extraordinarily difficult. You've chosen integrity over comfort, duty over protection. That takes courage." The colonel wiped his eyes. "It's the only choice, Your Honor." Bradley slumped in his chair, his arrogance finally shattered. For the first time, he looked small, scared, human. Judge Callahan turned to him. "Mr. Morrison, do you understand now? Do you understand what you've done?" Bradley's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, sir." "Do you understand that your father, a man of unimpeachable honor, just refused to save you because you don't deserve to be saved?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Because now we're going to talk about justice." Judge Callahan leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving Bradley Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, I've been on this bench for 30 years. I've seen thousands of defendants. Some were broken by circumstance. Some were victims of their environment. Some made terrible mistakes but showed genuine remorse." He paused. "You are not one of those people. You committed a vicious, unprovoked attack on an elderly man, a veteran who served this country with honor. You laughed about it. You minimized it. You showed no remorse until your father refused to protect you." Bradley's head hung low. "That tells me you're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught." The judge opened a file on his desk. "The prosecution has recommended 18 months in county jail. Your attorney has asked for probation and community service." He closed the file. "I'm rejecting both." The courtroom tensed. "Bradley Morrison, I hereby sentence you to 3 years in state prison, no possibility of early release. In addition, you will complete 1,000 hours of community service upon release, specifically volunteering at veterans' facilities. You will attend anger management and character development programs. And you will write a formal public apology to Mr. Fletcher, not because I'm ordering you to, but because you owe him that much." Bradley's attorney started to object, but the judge held up his hand. "I'm not finished." He turned to Colonel Morrison. "Colonel, I cannot impose additional penalties on your son beyond the law's reach. But I suspect you have your own consequences in mind." The colonel nodded grimly. "I do, Your Honor. Bradley will be financially cut off. No trust fund. No family support. When he gets out, he'll work for everything he has. He'll learn what it means to struggle. to earn respect instead of demanding it. Bradley looked at his father, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, please." "No, son. This is love. Real love. Not protection. Not enabling. Love that holds you accountable so you can become the man you're supposed to be." Judge Callahan turned to Martin Fletcher. "Mr. Fletcher, do you have anything you'd like to say?" The elderly veteran stood slowly. He looked at Bradley, not with hatred, but with something deeper. Sadness, perhaps, or wisdom. "Young man," Martin said quietly, "I forgive you." Bradley broke down sobbing. "But forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences," Martin continued. "You hurt me. You humiliated me. You made me feel powerless. But I've been through worse. I survived war. I survived losing friends. I'll survive this." He took a breath. "I hope you use this time to become better. Because right now, you're not the man your father raised you to be. But you could be." The courtroom was silent except for Bradley's quiet sobs. Judge Callahan struck his gavel once. "This court is adjourned. Mr. Morrison, you'll be remanded into custody immediately." Bailiffs approached Bradley. His father stepped forward and embraced him one last time. "I love you, son," the colonel whispered. "But you have to walk this road yourself now." Bradley nodded, unable to speak. As he was led away, the courtroom slowly emptied. But Martin Fletcher remained seated, staring at the empty defendant's chair. Judge Callahan approached him. "Mr. Fletcher, are you all right?" Martin looked up. "I will be, Your Honor." Justice was served today. Real justice. The judge nodded. Yes, it was. Epilogue. 8 months later. Bradley Morrison sat on a bench outside the Richmond Veterans Home, wearing a simple work uniform. His hands were calloused from months of manual labor. His face had lost its arrogance, replaced by something quieter, humbler. He was mopping floors, serving meals, listening to veteran stories. At first, he'd resented every moment. But slowly, something changed. He began to see these men and women not as obstacles or old people, but as human beings who had sacrificed everything. He heard their stories. He learned their names. He started to care. One afternoon, Martin Fletcher walked through the door. Bradley froze. Martin smiled gently. "Hello, Bradley." "Mr. Fletcher." I didn't know you volunteered here." "Every Tuesday," Martin said. "I like helping my fellow veterans." Bradley's voice shook. "I'm so sorry. I know I said it in court, but I need you to know I mean it. I was a spoiled, arrogant kid. I hurt you. And I'm sorry." Martin placed a hand on Bradley's shoulder. "I know you are, son. And I see you're trying to change. That's what matters now." Tears filled Bradley's eyes. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Maybe not," Martin said. "But I'm giving it to you anyway. That's what grace is." They stood there for a moment, two men from different generations, brought together by tragedy and redemption. Colonel Morrison watched from across the room, tears streaming down his face. His son was finally learning what honor truly meant.